Disney is known for their magical and significant fairy tales. They are the pinnacle of animated movies. Most of their animations are widespread classics, even if some of the plots haven't aged that well. Because let's face it, no one wants to hear the story of a poor fragile woman getting rescued by a rich man recycled a million times. Either way, I do think most of the older Disney animations are essential movies and help show the social contrast and evolutions of the animations we have today. Now, even with some of these dated plots and storylines, Disney still tends to make a compelling and interesting story out of it. And that's exactly what they set out to do with 2009's The Princess and the Frog, which was supposed to be a monumental moment for many Americans and black kids and adults alike, all around the globe. And what they gave instead was a huge disappointment. Let's just start off by saying The Princess and the Frog is one of the most boring Disney princess movies ever, if not the most boring. The story takes place in New Orleans. Tiana and her family are poor, and her dad had dreams of being a restaurant owner. The movie begins with Tiana's mother reading The Frog Prince for Tiana and her rich friend Charlotte LaBouffe, a tale in which this movie will be based upon. Years later, Tiana is a struggling waitress, her father passed, and she's desperate to open up her own restaurant. She refuses to take money as a handout from her best friend Charlotte and her dad, nicknamed Big Daddy, who's the richest man in town. Suddenly, the absolutely useless and womanizing Prince Naveen shows up to town after getting cut off financially by his parents and hopes to marry the rich girl in town, Charlotte, who happens to be Tiana's best friend. Tiana is asked to make beignets for the ball in which the prince will attend, which allows her to earn enough money to buy a broken down building to finally start her dream of becoming a restaurant owner. Now, the moment the useless handsome prince comes into the story, it instantly feels more like the frog and the princess, meaning it's the Prince Naveen spectacle instead of focusing more on Tiana. Prince Naveen and his awkward valet Lawrence meet a voodoo doctor that goes by the name of Dr. Facilier, but is nicknamed Shadow Man. Shadow Man invites them into his space and promises them that all of their dreams and wishes will come true, and manipulates and plays upon their insecurities to make them feel assured. Naveen is made into a frog, and Lawrence is given a voodoo necklace that makes him look like Naveen. Shadow Man intends to use Lawrence as a pawn to marry Charlotte, the richest girl in town, so that he could steal her father's fortune. Meanwhile, at the ball, which is supposed to be the great moment of Charlotte finally meeting her prince and living happily ever after, she grows nervous that he might never show up. Tiana is warned by the bankers that she's been outbid for her building and has a limited amount of time to get the required amount of money to keep ownership. Tiana wishes upon a star, meets Naveen as a frog, and is freaked out. He promises to help her with her restaurant and give the money she needed if she kisses him and turns him back into human, because he thinks she's a princess, but she's not. In a desperate attempt to secure her dream, she kisses him and turns into a frog as well, and she'll remain that way for 90% of the movie. Yes, that's absolutely correct. The first black princess was a frog, a literal frog, more than she was a human in the movie. And it's all because of some selfish, womanizing, lazy man who somehow became a hero throughout the movie. And he honestly has very few likable characteristics about him. He came to town to marry a rich woman simply because his parents cut him off, and he's so lazy that he doesn't try to get a job or even just do as he's told. He goes to a voodoo doctor. Sure, he does have some character development throughout the story, but it also feels like everything is at his own merits. Eventually, they go on a quest through the forest along with some friends to find Mama Odie, another voodoo doctor, to help turn them back into human. She basically says she can't help them, and Naveen must kiss an actual princess to break the spell. Meanwhile, the Shadow Man is out to get them. The voodoo necklace needs the prince's blood for Lawrence to maintain his Naveen look in order to deceive Charlotte into marrying him so they can steal the fortune. Naveen and Tiana fall in love on the quest, the bad guys defeated. They were going to stay frogs at first because they fell in love and think that love is all that they need. Imagine that, the first black princess stays a frog, but luckily she didn't. Her and Prince Naveen kissed and it broke the spell because they were in love, and by default Tiana is now a princess. Tiana gets her restaurant and they live happily ever after. That's basically how the story goes. Except in this story, the already poor woman gets the back end of the man's actions and is turned into an animal. Although I don't like some of the typical Disney cliches in this movie, or that the first black princess was a frog for most of the movie, there are more issues. All the main black male characters in this movie are evil or non-existent. Seeing that this movie was supposed to be culturally significant, it would have been nice to see a main character that is actually a black man be portrayed in a noble way. And of course, there's no father figure. He passes away before the actual story even begins. And I mean, I get the reasoning for this in the storyline, but you would think that they would make a smarter decision and stray away from such stereotypes. Another thing is Disney animations and music go hand in hand like a toothbrush with toothpaste, and although there are some really nice tunes in here, they aren't really compelling or even memorable. Something about this entire movie just feels so uninspired and slothful. There's not many redeeming qualities about it or even reasons worth watching it. Despite having literal voodoo become a main focus in this story, for better or for worse, it still feels like a Disney movie without the magic. Tiana is a likable character, but it feels like she comes second to Prince Naveen in the story, and I can't help but to feel like he's the main character. In 2009, Disney set out to give us our first black princess, and it was supposed to join their other classics as culturally significant fairy tales, to be looked back upon as some of the most prestigious entertainment for kids, adults, and families to watch. And today, it's one of the least celebrated and talked about Disney princess movies, and I think for a good reason. Aside from just being plain boring, the first place they messed up is the title. This story is not the princess and the frog, it's more like the frog. Just the freaking frog.